I am grateful to the for the indication by the Honorable Deputy Chair that just give us the documents and we will plow through them ourselves. So I, for the record, take it that the audited accounts for 2015, which are the only ones that are available at the moment, we don't have the 2016. That auditing process is going on for all organizations, as you are aware. But I think, Chair, we should, through your committee, note with appreciation that our higher education institutions, as well as ZIMDEF, are keeping up to speed with the minimum expectation that they should produce audited accounts. We are aware that there are the parastatals and other organizations that are behind by several years as far as the audited accounts are. So your sector, the one that you are supervising, for better or worse, is doing its job by producing audited accounts, timely audited accounts. This enables you to do your job and ask the right questions after you've gone through the accounts. But it also enables us, as the supervising ministry, to be aware of the challenges that are going on there and be able to make a policy intervention. But I do really want to take this opportunity to thank you for asking for these audited accounts and to thank the institutions, the universities, for being able to produce them so that we can do our job. I would like to make 4 observations about the state universities audit accounts, so that as you look at the accounts, perhaps we could have these issues along with your issues in mind. And then we would like to conclude by making some of the observations about the ZIMDEF account and raising some issues of concern there. With the university's chair, Honorable Chair, you will see from the accounts that except for 1 or 2, all the universities are incurring a deficit. And this is because their current liabilities exceed their assets. And in all of these cases, if you were to take the strict view and ask whether they are a going concern, the answer would have to be no. And this is an issue of concern to us. It is because the responsible authority is not meeting its obligation and has not been doing so for over a decade now. And if the responsible authority doesn't meet its obligation year after year, does not give operational support, does not give infrastructure development support or PSIP support, and does not meet salary obligations on time, it puts a lot of pressure. And universities are not supposed to worry about these things. They're supposed to worry about their teaching and research programs. So we have a situation whose impact that they are not a going concern, and we need to do something about that. Also, you will notice that they have all of them, again except for maybe one or two, have very high levels of debtors. On average, all of them is about 26%. Revenues for 2015 are debtors. The ones that are hit the hardest by this are LSU and HIT, which are, have 78% for LSU and 75% for HIT. And that's a very serious issue of concern. Then, of course, the third issue has to do with the problem that I already alluded to, which has to do with the funding of salaries from own resources. None of them, none of the audited statements we have shared with you support the proposition that they can fund salaries from own resources. None. And yet, every time Treasury keeps saying so, and yet we would expect Treasury to be guided by the audited. And if the accounts of the issues, we are happy to engage them on those issues. And then lastly, to observe that there is a serious inadequate support or funding for training consumables when it comes to STEM for all of them. And many of them don't even have the facilities, the labs. One honorable member, when we were debating in Parliament the PAMUS bill, I think honorable member from Binga wondered why we were introducing another university of science when, in his view, at NAST there was a crane that was decaying. Now, if you reach a stage where a crane is decaying, you know you're having serious problems. I think that decaying crane has since been removed. That member posed as, I think that's thought if they leave that crane, which was put in 1993 or thereabout, and the construction was abandoned because the resources were not supported. They thought if they leave it there, we'll keep remembering that, look, that crane has some job to do. But when we were told that it is a shameful example of a decayed crane, we removed it. But the higher operating costs for science and technology universities is a matter that we think needs to be taken into account, because they can't discharge the STEM agenda without the adequate teaching materials, research support, and the appropriate lecture theaters and laboratories. This is obviously, STEM is an issue for all of the universities, and they are all concerned about it. These are the issues I'd like to highlight regarding the universities, and then end with issues I want to raise up on the ZIMDEF. Do we have this document? I asked them that. Huh?
Is it not for distribution?
What do you mean not for distribution? The committee needed to have it. Okay. What is that? Of this?
Yes.
Let me see.
It's on the text.
No, but this is a summarized version of the ZIMDEF account.
Yes.
Yeah, but it can't be of this document. This is a policy. You can't summarize this. This must speak for itself. So, do you have enough of this? Is summarizing the audited account for ZIMDEF?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have 9 of this? I mean,
Yeah.
10, the honorable members are 10.
Yeah, that document is in the text, which was
Oh, this document. That's fine. So, honorable members, you have this document. It's a self-explanatory document. It's a financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2015. I just want to make sure that you have. Okay, the chair has. Honorable members? Okay. Now, the one thing about ZIMDEF, Honorable Chair, that I find interesting, I mean, it's common cause that I joined the ministry in July of 2015. When I did, I myself, I must confess, didn't really know much about ZIMDEF. I'm even tempted to say I didn't know that there was anything called ZIMDEF. And I didn't get very much into it because of two things. First, when I went into the ministry, I preoccupied myself over the interactions that are in that compendium that I've given you. I was more interested in learning about what the ministry is doing and so forth. And then I went into the... So you have them. Yeah. I was going to be very disappointed. I just thought that my plan was now being sabotaged right in front of my eyes. You know the story, the bureaucrats never miss an opportunity to sabotage a minister. I think it's important for you to have this because a lot of practices that we found at ZIMDEF were just that, practice. But there was no reference point that says these practices have been summarized into policy. Because there were practices which in fact were policy practices. But you needed to have been there for a long time to know how you do this, how you do that. When there is this situation, how do you address it? So when we realized that there were problems and so forth, we thought, no, let's not only codify the practices, but let's reflect on them as a ministry. And if a practice was inconsistent either with good corporate governance or with the law, especially the Manpower Development, the Manpower Planning and Development Act, then we do something about it. So now this is the policy. So if we're doing anything and so forth, this is the reference point. This is the ZIMDEF policy. We thought that it would make sense for you to have the policy document and the audited accounts, so that if there are issues arising from the audited accounts that require explanation, you may not necessarily need to keep calling us. You check on the policy, and if after that you still have issues, then you can, as you always do, come to us. So I needed to highlight that one page, and then this policy as the backdrop for interrogating the ZIMDEF audited accounts, which accounts, I'm happy to say, if I were to borrow a cliche or use the language of the auditors, it's a clean bill of accounts. I was tempting to say a clean bill of health, but but it is a clean bill of health. But you know, where there are issues and so forth, it's the person who is reading the accounts who raises the issues and so forth, and we are happy to answer. It would be remiss of me to conclude this presentation without bringing to your attention, Honorable Chair and Honorable members of our committee a matter that has greatly concerned me about the ZIMDEF accounts in general and the ZIMDEF issues. And with your indulgence, I would like to take this opportunity to bring to your attention about 8 or so issues arising around ZIMDEF, which are of tremendous concern to me, and end up with a specific request that is your minister in particular, in charge of this ministry, I have a request to put forward, and a request I will make, fully aware that I'm speaking to you without the privileges that I normally have as a member of parliament when I'm speaking in the floor, where you can say anything and enjoy parliamentary privilege. Here I'm speaking under oath, and I have been alive to that issue right from the time you asked me to do so. The first issue, with your indulgence, is that sometime in December, in fact, before I do this, have you given, now I would like to request you to, the issues, each of the issues I want to raise, I would like to give you the documentation for them.
Minister, before you go ahead, we instructed really not to discuss much details about ZIMDEF. We said we are doing some issues to do with the course, this and that, and not ask the minister much about that issue. But it is your wish you want to explain to us, and it does not involve this, said that will be sort of
Yeah, well, I'm going to raise, I'm also alive to that as a student of law, that there is something called the sub judice rule. And I'm also, as a member of parliament, aware of the rule that if there is a matter before the court, parliament cannot engage or debate that issue until it's resolved there, and vice versa. The court will not encroach on parliament. But there are two things. First, I'm really happy to give you that documentation. Without saying much about all of it, I would rather think it is self-explanatory. You need to know those issues because you superintend over us. And because, in terms of our constitution, all institutions of the state and agencies of the state are accountable to parliament. And that accountability can't stop, and it shouldn't stop. Our work should not stop. What I wanted to say, because you said bring this audited account and want to, So I said fine. I'm going to give them the audited accounts, which I've done. But I want you to take note of the fact that it has been very difficult for us in the ministry to discharge our policy and legislative responsibility because of these issues. And I want you to take note that it is my considered view that we have been derailed, not necessarily because of the law, but because of issues which absolutely have nothing to do with the law. And it has brought us back. This stuff that I gave you, the compendium and so forth, we should have implemented last year. But we were not able to focus 100% on our job because in my considered view, and since you are our committee, of issues that had nothing to do with the law. Now, in particular with respect to that, it came, and this has nothing to do with the subject rule, but on the 9th of December, you will see from the record there that Zach wrote a letter to the Speaker raising all sorts of issues, and if the rule of the sub judice applies, it's surprising that the matters would be in the court and ZAC is writing to the Speaker of Parliament about those matters. And in the signature of the chairperson, but clearly raising issues which are of interest to a particular commissioner there, and giving rise to two issues in terms of that letter. I'm trying to see, because we have my letter here. We don't have the exact letter. Oh, okay. Giving rise to two issues, Mr. Chairman. First of all, how does ZAC write to the Speaker of Parliament when on the 9th of December, when by the 4th of November they've taken the matters to the court? That can't be hidden from the public. The idea that people do things behind the scene and do so in violation of the legal procedures is unacceptable. That's first, I draw your attention to this self-explanatory letter written to the Speaker about the ZIMDEF case, because we think that if the ZIMDEF case is going to come to Parliament, it should be through this committee.
Yes.
We think so. And we think it's unprocedural and even illegal to do it in this manner that was done on the 9th of December. That's the first observation I give. The letter, I'm not going to go through the content, but I availed to you. And then, surprisingly, the letter is copied to Vice President Mnangagwa, Dr. Chombo, and to Dr. Mishek Svanda, and not to me, and not to you. Again, I want to say quite clearly, this is improper. Because ZIMDEF, we administer, and if the Speaker of Parliament is going to be advised about ZIMDEF, we either should know or our committee should know. But for it to be behind our backs, at a time when the matter is before the courts, after it has been taken there by ZAC, this is the kind of thing we say is bad administration of public affairs in our country. That's what I want to say with regard to that, and to suggest to you that this is a matter we bring to your attention with a great deal of concern, not only because it is right in your lap, it can be covered by the sub judice rule, but also because it raises serious implications. It can't be in the interest of the administration of justice that we do things like this. It can't be in the interest of the accountability to Parliament that we do things like this. That's one issue. The last issue, I've given you a number of documents, but I want to raise the last issue, which I also think is right in your lap. And it has to do with file number 7. I've marked the documents file number 1 to 8. I have just addressed file number 1, which is right in your lap. The rest of the documents support that. And now I want to conclude by drawing your attention to file number 7. They are marked on top like this, or maybe it's on the mind.
This one.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I thought they'd marked the same way they marked from me. Honorable Speaker, it is, sorry, Honorable Chair, it is a common cause that on the 18th of December, the Sunday Mail published an article about our ministry. And under the title, ZAC digs in on Professor Molo. And the article alleged that it's being written on the 18th of December. It alleged that last week, meaning the week before the 18th of December, ZAC stumbled on a number of suspicious ZIMDEF transactions. This is the 18th of December. This is well after the court process. No one is observing any sub judice rule. ZAC is stumbling on some stuff, and it goes to the Sunday Mail and tells them, we have stumbled on this, and the transactions allegedly being suspicious, those that are listed there. They are listed on that document, and they are also summarized in this document. This is the entire work of the ministry. The entire work of the ministry is the first issue. I want to highlight three things. Why? Because you must know, and if we are going to solve this problem, you must be engaged. First, the entire work of the ministry is now alleged to be stumbled on suspicious documents. Number one. Number two, it covers, this entire work covers the period from 2013 to 2016. Now, I was assigned to that ministry on the 7th of July 2015. And all of it from 2013 to 2016 is ascribed as first improper and procedural and is subject of corruption. And it is 4.5 million. And the majority, over 4 million of that, is approved by my predecessors. Number one. But number two, appropriately in terms of the procedures that we have, including utilization of our ministry procurement committee. But it's being put as and it's being given in the newspapers. And now it's the entire work of the ministry. And an impression is given to the public that this is Moyo. ZAC is digging in on Moyo, on issues that took place there even before I joined the ministry. I think that communicates something, and it's alleged they've just stumbled on it. How do they just stumble? How do you stumble on the ministry's work? Now, Chair and honorable members, when that happened, my officers were affected. And I have to raise this because I'm having problems in the ministry. I'm having officers who don't want to do their job, because if what they did here is illegal, then there is nothing they're going to do. And it's unworkable. It's unworkable for me today, and I dare say it will be unworkable tomorrow if His Excellency assigns somebody else, unless that somebody else is not targeted. But even if that somebody else is not targeted, they are going to find a bureaucracy that is now in a state of crippling fear. How are we going to deliver on the issues that you're talking about? If they think there is a danger, they will wake up tomorrow and find a thing like this, and ZAC will claim they've stumbled on it, and they're working in cahoots with the estate newspaper. If I become quiet about that, what kind of a minister will I be? But I want to report to you that I have a problem in the ministry because my officers are no longer delivering. They refuse to sign obvious things. How do they refuse? Of course, being bureaucrats, they are clever in the way they refuse. They don't say no, minister. They dive. The result is nothing is happening. The efficiency and effectiveness we had before has disappeared. And I think you need to know. The last observation about that, which is very serious, is that these documents that they claim to have stumbled on are the same, or among them are documents that went missing from the ministry when it was broken into on the 6th and 7th of August last year. These are not documents that were lawfully taken from the ministry. And now they think they are clever, they can say they've stumbled on them. How do you stumble on all these things? Honorable Chair, on the 6th and 7th of August last year, the 6th floor and 5th floor of the ministry were broken into. 4 computers were taken. My office was broken into its 6th floor. The permanent secretary's office, 6th floor. They were ransacked. But more offices, 7 offices on the 5th floor of directors were broken into, ransacked, and all sorts of documents taken. Then we hear people boasting that they stumbled on documents. I can tell you that there are a number of documents which were taken from there, which we have found are in the possession of these people. You don't take documents by breaking into office. That's unlawful. You use warrants. You can't break it. And so I have a situation where the directors, the majority of them, 7, their office is broken into and things taken. And then we are told the matter is under investigation, and no other office or ministry has. We know that several offices have been broken into, but none in this fashion. None where it's 6th floor, 5th floor, and 7 directors, and the permanent secretary's office, and the minister's office, and people take documents and go away. And the next time some of those documents appear, there's somebody saying, we've stumbled on them. It's very difficult, Honorable Speaker. So, we need to, sorry, I keep saying Honorable Speaker because when we come to Parliament there is a Speaker, but it's Chair.
He receives.
Yes, on behalf of the Honorable Speaker. It's just the psychology of Parliament. But so, I don't think that this is subjudice. It's not. We've stayed away from the 4 or 5 transactions that are there, but we've given you some of the documents on them because they've been lies. But I am dying to come back and talk to you about those 5 transactions. Because a lot of lies have been said out there. But for now, we will not say, and I just want to raise those 2 issues which are relating to the Speaker being written to without you being copied over ZIMDEF, and allegations being made and copies being written or sent to the Vice President Mnangagwa and to the Chief Secretary to the Cabinet and the President Dr. Sibanda and to Dr. Chombo. But not to us. And that's not subject to say. And then this thing of people stumbling on documents, going to the public, covering the entire ministry, leaving me with a crippled bureaucracy. So afraid. If I keep quiet and say subject to say, I will not do the work that the President has asked me to do. I won't. Because I have a crippled, a fearful bureaucracy. They say if this is not right, then what is right? And that's why we even tried in a small way to put this public to explain the relevant acts of the law and so forth. And as far as I'm concerned, in conclusion, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, I think at some point the Constitution, Honorable Chairman, is very clear, very, very clear as to the powers of Parliament. Section 119 of the Constitution says, Parliament has power to ensure that the provisions of this Constitution are upheld and that the state and all institutions and agencies of government, that includes ZAC, at every level, act constitutionally and in the national interest. And 119 subsection 3 says, for the purposes of subsection 2, all institutions and agencies of the state and government at every level are accountable to Parliament. On our behalf, as the committee that oversees this sector in Parliament, and the committee through which we come to Parliament, we think you must take an interest in this matter. And we believe at some appropriate time, Parliament should come up with a structure through you to look into this case. Because there is no institution which is above the law and no institution that does not account to Parliament. So I respectfully submit to you, on the basis of those 2 issues, a letter written to Parliament, a shocking letter written to Parliament, showing that outside the law, outside the due process of the law, people are doing things. They go to court, behind the scenes they're doing something else. And then this 18th of December, where the entire dossier, work of the ministry, going to 2013, is put there in the newspapers with outlandish claims that this is corrupt, and then the officers who are involved withdraw their cooperation with the ministers, with the result that we don't do. We think that is very important, and people who are doing that should be held to account by Parliament. Thank you very much.